So scratch coat, nice and dry, solid, getting ready to float. I like to put some edge blocks in just so I can float up to those and peel them off. And it leaves me a nice crisp edge for our mitered returns. We got our square lines all set up here to a very specific depth. So when I set my float strips, I will rest my level right on that black line. That's how thick I want my mud wall to be. This one is very specific because we want an exactly centered drain and a specific width or depth for our returns. So I will try to set all my strips right on that line. That'll give us a square shower, and then we plumb those up from there. Yep. This is my homemade float strip soaker that I made like 15 years ago. These are Masonite, 1/8 inch Masonite. I ripped them down from a 48 by 96 sheet, so I can get like 40 something in a sheet for like 12 bucks. I like these because they're super thin, they stick really good to the mud, and they're cheap, so I can just toss them after every float. I don't have to waste time cleaning them. They don't warp, and I soak them so they don't suck the moisture out of the mud and dry out and fall off the wall too fast. So spread some mud on the wall, burn it into the scratch coat, and then make a little mound of mud all the way up the wall, and then set that Masonite float strip into the mud, put our level on it, tap it in with a mallet until it's exactly at my line, and then I make sure it's plumb all the way up. This is my crappy 6-foot level because the 8-footer is too long for this one. So as long as that float strip is plumb from top to bottom, and I'm on my line down here, then our shower will be square at the bottom, and it will be square at the top as well. I've got all my float strips set. That's a really fast process. You have to work fast over scratch coat. You have literally a few minutes to get those up before it starts to stiffen up. So float strip placement is determined by sometimes valves or a niche, but it's mostly determined by the length of your screeds. So you don't want to have to cut a new screed for every project. So I have this screed that is about 6 inches narrower than our shower. So I need to set these float strips in far enough that my screed will reach that in both directions. I could cut a new screed for it, but I don't want to waste a screed. So you just adapt with what you have. This one here, I have kind of a standard size that fits well for this. So yeah, float strip placement determined by the length of your screeds typically. Now when I float, I'm going to float these 2 short walls first. The reason is because as I'm screeding my mud, this screed is going to dig into that wall unless I'm super careful, and I don't like to have to be super careful. I just want to move quick and efficiently. So I'll float these 2 side walls, and then I'll float the back wall last, because this screed will ride on those 2 float strips in each corner. So I can just glide up my float strips, not worrying about gouging the corner, and it gives me a nice crisp corner when I'm done. So strategic float strip placement. Took me a long time to figure that out. Nobody taught me that, unfortunately, in the beginning. I learned the hard way. Hopefully this helps somebody not learn the hard way. So I like to do the top section first. One reason is that top part against the ceiling has always seemed difficult for me to get the mud on, especially if it's really thick. The main reason is, well, I don't like to start at the bottom because I end up kicking my mud, hitting it with my screeds. It's, you know, I ruin it. So the main reason though is I've got that top section screeded out. So now I have a depth gauge. So as I'm spreading my mud up the wall, I know about how thick to spread it, the thickness of that mud. Rather than putting too little on, having to add more after I screed it, or putting way too much on and just having a huge screed full of mud, which I still do occasionally. So now I'll work in like 2 foot sections. I'll spread that, screed it, spread that, screed it, spread that, screed it. Okay, so I'm working my way down this wall. You can see I'll spread a section and then screed it. You want to be able to move your screed back and forth and carve the mud. You don't just want to drag it up because that wants to pull it off the wall. That's another thing to think about when you're placing your float strips. Do they give you room to slide your screed back and forth? You don't want them right in the corner to where you can barely move your screed like you're trying to milk a cat. You want it to be able to glide back and forth and cut that mud. Picture like a big bandsaw carving that mud. I've got these 2 sidewalls floated. A couple more things I was thinking about. Get your mud table as close to you as you can where it's not in your way. You don't want to be taking any steps. You want to just have 1 foot, pivot, grab your mud, put it on the wall. Every time you take a couple steps, you're killing time. You want to just stay in the same place, grab mud, put it on the wall, grab mud, put it on the wall. Don't waste time walking over to your mud board, get it nice and close. Don't worry too much about this stuff for now. We'll clean that up later. Sorry, I'm breathing heavy because I've been working hard. I'm kind of fat. But that's why I'm doing mud, so I can get in better shape. We're gonna do the big wall now. This one you can see super thick over here. That's about 1 inch thick up top. That wall kind of bows backwards, so I put a little bit of mud on there just to start to build it out. And here we go. Okay, I've got all my walls floated. I did about 10 bags in about 3 hours. I don't know if that's fast or slow. I don't really care. Faster than it used to be. So now that it's all floated, we want to let it just kind of simmer. I'll let it cook, let that mud firm up. It'll start to get firm. This is about the time I'll pull out my float strips. This one's come loose because it's so thin and dry up there. I like the Masonite because it just peels right out. With like redwood strips, you sometimes have to cut those out. So I'll pull the strips, fill those with mud, and then I'm gonna let it sit while I eat lunch. Let it get pretty firm, and then I will start to clean it up. You know, clean up all the little nubs of mud. And then after it's nice and firm, I will rub it down and smooth it out. And that's my favorite part. Okay, so I let this mud sit up for about an hour while I ate lunch and cleaned up. It's firm enough now that I can take my resin float, some people like a wood float, and just rub it really lightly. Just barely get a couple fingers on it. Don't push too hard. You don't want to dent it. Rub it all smooth, and then I will take my flat trowel and even more carefully just kind of seal in all the little grains. If it was a mosaic shower or something, I may take a little more time to fill in some of these little holes. Typically, I'm not worried about it. With our nice crisp 3/4 inch thick edge detail, and there is a floated square plumb, extremely flat, hard to demo, fun to set tile over, fun to do mud shower. Next week we'll do the pan, and then I put a topical waterproofing over all my floats. That's just my preference. Anyway, thanks for watching.